Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Aro Ling Cardiff. And this evening's teachings have been given by Ngakma Nor'dzin, and the subject is the Vajra Guru Mantra.
So it's quite fortunate that this evening's practice was a waxing moon practice. So we have practiced Vajra Guru Mantra already. I'm just going to slide the screen share back across for a moment, just so you can see the mantra again, because I'm going to start by describing a little bit about the mantra. It isn't generally usual to translate mantras, to say what the words mean. That's because the meaning of the mantra is greater than the individual parts of it. And the ultimate meaning of the mantra is that it is an invocation or an envisionment or the essence of the Yidam or the being who is the nature of that mantra. But because this is quite a short mantra, a fairly simple mantra, I say that advisedly, it has tremendous depth to it, despite it being quite short and simple. I thought it was just worth going through the different parts of the mantra and saying something about them. So the first three syllables, Om, Ah, and Hung, these are white, red, and blue. And these represent the three spheres of being. And how the three spheres of being are described will depend on the perspective that you're talking from. So you could say that this represents mind, speech, and body. You could say that these syllables are the syllables when you're practicing Lama Naljo, unification with the Lama, that will appear at the head, the throat, and the heart centers. You could say that Om Ah Hung represents the central channel, the solar and lunar channels. And ultimately, Om Ah Hung is an expression of emptiness, energy, and form. So we have all the different vehicles there and all the different subtleties, the different of the spheres in relation to the vehicles. Now this next word, Benzra, or sometimes written without the R, just as Benza, is Vajra. It is actually the Sanskrit word Vajra, but because Himalayan Buddhists don't have this V sound in their part of their alphabet, that it comes out as a B sound. So Vajra turns into Benzra or Benza. But that is what this syllable means. It means Vajra, which is the thunderbolt sector. This is a Vajra or a Dorje. And this represents the indestructible essence of beginningless enlightenment. So this is the union of the three spheres. This is an expression of the fourth sphere, the Svabhavikakaya in Sanskrit, a union or an expression of non-duality, the indestructible nature of beginningless mind, beginningless wisdom mind, and non-duality. The next word, guru, is the Sanskrit for Lama. So this is the teacher. And this represents the internal teacher, your own beginningless wisdom mind, and the external teacher, who in this case is Guru Rinpoche. And it represents the union of those through engaging in the mantra, that one realizes the nature of Guru Rinpoche through practicing the mantra and recognizing that one's own nature is ultimately no different and not separate to the nature of Guru Rinpoche. The next word is Pema, which is the lotus flower. Now, in the Sutric teachings, the lotus is described as growing up through all the muck and dirt in the bottom of the lake, coming up through that, growing up, and then opening into this beautiful, perfect, pristine flower that is pure and beautiful and has nothing of the dirt of the lake from which it's grown on those pristine petals. So the lotus is a symbol that, although we may experience ourselves as deluded beings, confused beings, that we have neuroses, that we have emotions that are not always as we would wish them to be, we might get angry with people and so on and so forth, that these can be transformed, that they are still of the essence of beginningless realization. So anger is actually clarity, and all the other emotions, they have their non-dual, liberated quality that we can discover through practicing this mantra. Now, those three words together, Benzo Guru Pema, refer to Guru Rinpoche. This is one of the names by which he is known, Benzo Guru Pema, the lotus-born Lama. And Ngakpa taught on the 8 manifestations of Guru Rinpoche and talked quite a lot about the lotus-born Lama last week. So I'm not going to go through that again. You can go and look up that video if you missed that last week. But he is this indestructible quality and this purity that manifests and that we can discover through practicing his mantra. The next word, Siddhi, is Sanskrit for accomplishment. So this is a recognition of accomplishment, of his Guru Rinpoche's accomplishment, an aspiration to move towards realizing that accomplishment ourselves. And it is also an expression of beginningless attainment, that we all have the capacity to manifest siddhis. We all have the capacity to manifest realization. And then finally, Hung is the seed syllable of the mantra. So the mantra is said to arise from this syllable, and Guru Rinpoche himself is said to manifest from this syllable. And in this instance, this is either a red Hung or a Hung in the 5 elemental colors. So I'm just going to slide back to full screen for all of us. Now, when we first became, well, actually, even before we formally became students of Ngakpa Rinpoche, we used to meet with him. I think we met once a week, didn't we? And we used to meet in it was quite a small group, and we used to meet in each other's houses. And the only practices that we engaged in were the practices that you've just done, Vajra Guru Mantra and Dorje Tsigdon. That was all we did for several years, I think, yes. We only had one tune for Dorje Tsigdon, and that was the tune that we usually practice before meals now, not the tune we practiced at the beginning today. And these 3 ways of singing Vajra Guru Mantra, and that was literally all we practiced with Rinpoche for years. So that means that we received a lot of teachings on Vajra Guru Mantra, because that was the main practice at the time, and that we have been practicing this mantra in this way, with these 3 ways of practicing it, for over 40 years, I think, which is somewhat extraordinary. Ngakpa had his birthday. Was it yesterday? Day before yesterday. Yes. So we're feeling our age. Now, from the perspective of Tantra, mantra is a practice that enables you to be alert and present. It is something that protects the mind. So if the mind is present with mantra, then the mind isn't present with somebody who's irritated you and chuntering over that in your mind, or indulging some sort of neurotic fantasy, or getting annoyed with something that happened a day or so before, or whatever. So if you remain with mantra turning in the mind, then this protects the mind from less useful things that might be running through the mind. Mantra, nak in Tibetan, literally means spell. So you may have noticed on the shared screen that this is called an awareness spell. And it really functions very similarly to our understanding of the words spell in ordinary Western culture, that if you recite this, it has an effect. Unfortunately, it's not like Accio remote control or something like that, and it's there. You do it once and it has its effect. Or what? I can't think.
Or something from Buffy.
Yeah, or something from Buffy, where she just does a spell and there it is. It's all in order to gain the power of the mantra and thereby the experience of the yidam, or the being whose mantra this belongs to. You have to, from the perspective of Tantra, engage in a vast amount of repetition of this mantra. Then the mantra will start to have an effect on you, and the practice of transformation will begin to happen. And the mantra has to be recited at a minimum 100,000 times for each syllable in the mantra. So for Vajra Guru Mantra, that would mean that you would expect to have to practice this. I always forget the numbers. Is it 1,200,000 times? And that's actively engaged in it, knowing that you're engaged in it. You would have to practice the mantra a minimum of that many times before you could expect to have any sense of the power of the mantra and the way in which the mantra can function as a transformative practice. But from the perspective of Dzogchen, engagement with mantra is slightly different. We have a different relationship with mantra. And the Tantric and the Dzogchen methods will always be practiced together. The Dzogchen is Tantra. It's the most subtle of the Tantric
vehicles.
Thank you, vehicles. But Dzogchen is also considered a vehicle on its own. And the main practice of mantra in terms of Dzogchen is the practice of finding presence of awareness in the dimension of the mantra. So it's being present with the experience of engaging with the mantra, and that includes being present with the melody and accurate with the melody in order to find presence of awareness. So when we practice the mantra in these three ways as a support to meditation practice, we are engaging in the mantra in this way to support our meditation practice, to make our meditation practice more effective, to enable us to be more present and make better use of the time we are spending in meditation practice. So I'm going to go through the 3 ways in a little more detail than we would just from singing them together, so that you can understand these aspects of how the mantra functions in that way. Now, as I say, it's quite important to be accurate in this and to understand it, because the mantra cannot really function as a support to meditation practice if you don't understand it as a method to do that. So the first method, which uses very long syllables for an entire breath, for example, the purpose of singing this mantra in this way is to control the breath, to work with the breath as a massage. And that has the effect of calming and settling and focusing the mind. Now, if you practice this in a slightly excitable way, then the mantra is not going to be able to function to settle the mind as effectively. One has to enter the dimension of practicing the mantra in the way that it's described, that these long, focused, concentrated syllables where one is controlling the breath is the method that enables the mind to settle and focus. And if there's any anxiety or anything like that in the mind, or if you're very distracted, then this mantra can settle that. Now, in group practice, we always practice all 3 forms of the mantra. But if you're practicing on your own at home and including Vajra Guru Mantra as part of your daily practice, it isn't necessary to practice all 3. You can judge which of the mantras you actually need. So if your mind is already quite settled and calm and peaceful, then maybe you wouldn't need to practice this version of it. But if your mind is very distracted, full of other thoughts and very busy, then this would be the one that it would be useful to practice. Now, as I say, this one is very much about controlling the breath. And one has to work within the capacity and or limitation of one's own breath. Now, you may have noticed that sometimes Ngakpa finishes a syllable before I do. And that is because I seem to have a capacity to extend my breath into a syllable a little bit longer than Ngakpa. So as I am Umze for that bit of the practice, Umze means chant leader. I'm the person who leads that particular part of the practice. Ngakpa simply stops when his breath runs out, takes a natural breath and continues, or just waits for the next syllable on the next breath. Now, if I was the follower and Ngakpa was the Umze, I would finish the syllable when he finishes. I wouldn't continue it for the length of my breath if my breath was longer, because if he's leading and I follow him. But usually for that one, I lead. So you're stuck with the length of my breath. We also usually, if we're practicing this on retreat or in solitary practice, we would sing this 3 times. But because it is quite long, it takes about a good 3 minutes to practice it once. We only practice it once in these Monday meditation sessions, because otherwise it would dominate the session and take too long. So now we only practice it once in this session. So the Om and the Ah are practiced as a single breath. Om, ah, go straight into the ah on the same breath. And then it is cut. Now the breath is cut several times in this slow version of the mantra, and that is itself a method. So it is important to cut your breath when the umse cuts the breath, and have that moment, that gap of silence, of spacious silence at the end of the ah. We then have the hung, which is a single breath, and that goes up and then down in a crescendo. So hung, and fades away. And it's long, but it's not particularly protracted, that one. We then have the benza, and this goes up slightly, then down, and then the breath is chopped repeatedly at the end of the benza. And again, this is not particularly long and protracted, and this is done on a single breath. Now, I have always used my diaphragm to chop the breath. So you may notice when I'm chopping the breath there, my body is sort of vibrating slightly, and that's because I'm chopping the breath with my diaphragm. But I've had some training in singing, so I think maybe other people aren't necessarily able to do that. So that's fine, just chop the breath however you are able to manage it. Then Guru and Pema, these are both a single breath, and they are for however long your breath lasts. And the different parts of the note should be fairly even across the syllable Guru and Pema. So you really just need to get to know your own breath and how you can divide that up for yourself across a single breath, those different parts of the note. And just notice that at the end of Pema, when you're singing the ah at the end of Pema, it turns into an E sound right at the end, Pema, E, and then it finishes. You'll notice this E coming in the next one as well. I cannot explain why that is there. It is simply that is the transmission that we received and that Ngakchang Rinpoche received from whoever gave him transmission of these three methods. And so that is the way we sing it. So then we come to Siddhi, and Siddhi is still a breath, but it's not so long and protracted. We're not holding that for such a long time. And then we come to Hung, which is long and protracted again. So the important thing to remember is that this is very focused and very controlled. You're massaging the lung, the subtle energy, through the control of the breath. It should not be excitable. This should not be an exciting practice. It should be very controlled. And remember that it is used for excitable and distracted states. So then the next way of singing the mantra, the medium length, this uses hard and soft qualities of the voice, loud and quiet qualities, fast and slow qualities, and high and low sounds. And again, it's important to be accurate in this. If the mantra is going to be useful in the way in which the transmission gives it in order to support meditation practice. Now the Om, Ah, and the beginning of the Hung, there's a little I sound again that is inserted Om I A Hu. And it's not Om I A, it's Om I A. There's a staccato quality to that. They're not smooshed together. So the Om I A Hu, the beginning of the Hung, are loud and hard. And then the rest of the Benza, that is very soft, light and quiet. And it should be noticeably softer, lighter and quieter than the Om I A Hu. And then the end of the benza, the ah at the end of the benza, is very long, loud and slow. So that is held. And then that goes straight into guru, which is still long and slow, but not quite as loud. And then the final part of the mantra, Pema Siddhi Hung, is very light and quick at the end. So, Om I A Hu Benza Ah Pema Siddhi Hung. So there are those different qualities at the different stages that it's important to remember them and practice them, because that is the part of the method of this way of singing the mantra. And this version of singing the mantra is very useful when some sort of emotional state is getting in the way of your meditation practice. So if emotion is welling up, or if you're feeling sadness or grief or loss or yearning, it's very good for working with those states so that you're then able to return to your meditation practice and let go of those emotional states. Then finally, the fast way of singing the mantra. Now, if this is being practiced in retreat, or if you're practicing it on your own, then there is an introduction with the cymbals and the drum, but also possibly with other instruments. You can include yelling. If there's a whole bunch of people, you can practice yelling, which are a bit like an oboe, and they do these trilling high notes. You can play, are they called the dungchen? Dungchen, the long horns that do a very long sonorous note. You could play a conch shell, which has a very long, protracted, quite an extraordinary sound, a conch shell, and it carries for miles. So do you mind if we just run through that intro? Because we don't do this on Monday meditations, because again, it takes quite a long time. So all of you except Sam will have heard this before. So we'll just play this through once.
Just once.
Well, we'll do the 3 times, but not a beginning and an end. Okay, just so that you can hear what this is like. And normally this would be at the beginning and end of the mantra.
It's been a while. Pama Siddhi Hum.
And so on. And then we would do that at the end of practicing the mantra as well. And the other instruments would come back in. And this is quite an extraordinary thing to experience. If oh, my right hearing aid didn't like that. It's quite an extraordinary thing to experience if you're in a group and there's all these different instruments joining in with that. Now, this way of singing the mantra, it's not as melodic as the other ways. It's more a rhythm than a melody. And it is important to play an instrument. So one thing you can do if you don't have any of those instruments is you can use your, camera's on the other side, your bell, and just play the clapper just like that. Hum benza guru pema siddhi hum, om ma hum benza guru pema siddhi hum, om ma hum benza guru pema siddhi hum, and so on. Now it's quite important to engage yourself physically when you're practicing this version of the mantra, because the purpose of this version of the mantra is to overcome dullness, dull states, depressed states. So if you're experiencing emotional depression, this is a really good way to practice the mantra. Or if you're falling asleep in your meditation practice, then engage in this, and this will help overcome this. Now, if you don't have any instruments, you can just make a noise and use, you can't see me, but do the, just do this on your knees. Now, for some reason, you don't clap. Clapping is not something that is practiced. I think it means something different in Himalayan culture.
Himalayan culture, it means driving away demons.
Yes, so you wouldn't clap to it, but you can do your hands on your thighs just to physically join in the rhythm of the mantra. And that's quite important, to engage yourself in that way so that you are working with any dullness that you're experiencing or flat, depressed state there. So that's why these Vajra Guru Mantra is practiced in these three ways in Monday meditations. They're practiced as a support for meditation. There are many, many tunes for Vajra Guru Mantra, and there are other tunes that are practiced within the Aro lineage. But when these three methods are practiced as a support for meditation practice, then it is important to practice them accurately and in the way that you've received them. So that's Vajra Guru Mantra.
Thank you very much. I love the way that that gives us a concise practice where it's easy to learn the words. It becomes easier to practice the melodies and practice them accurately. And then we've got something to which we can apply to all manner of different mind states. So it's extremely helpful to know these methods.
Yeah, because it pretty much covers the spectrum of the emotions, I think.
Yes. It
does really cover all the different mind states that we may be very good at using an excuse for not being able to meditate.
So it has the effect of making those states into a practice.
Yeah,
because they remind you that you have the option of practicing Vajra Guru Mantra.
And the thing to remember is that you're finding presence of awareness in the dimension of the way that you are engaged with the mantra. And that's how the mantra functions as a method.
Marvelous.